Okay. All right, we'll get started. Thank you for being here today to go over the MS in Management and Organizational Behavior program. Let's get started. So, going through our agenda, we'll go through introductions, go through the history of the program, define what organizational behavior is, cover our learning goals, the curriculum overview to show you the classes that are in the program, cover the admissions criteria, how to finance your venue education, what it means when we say becoming an Eagle, give you options on how to stay in contact with us in grad admissions, and then a brief Q&A with our professor on the call, Dr. Rachel Nerl. So, who's on the call today? I'm Jenny Jeske, the Assistant Director of Admissions for Graduate and Doctoral Programs, and we have with us Dr. Rachel Nerl. She is the Assistant Professor in the MOB program, also has her Master's and PhD in Organization Development from Benedictine. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Nerl has, in her career, spent over 20 years in both the fields of IT and software, with experience in various leadership positions. She has experience specifically in the areas of organizational development, change management, strategic planning, process improvement, marketing, and a lot more. So she brings a wealth of knowledge to the classroom, and we're lucky to have her here at Benedictine. So going over a brief history of the program, the MLB program was first created by Dr. Peter Sorensen, who still is on campus today and helps with the program even to this day. So it was started in 1968, and it started at George Williams College. So it was there for a little while. The original mission of the program was to train administrators of community service agencies. A few years after that, they realized that they need to encompass more people. So the goal of the program shifted to include a focus on the human element of organizations. The program then came to Benedictine in 1986. And so overall, it's over 50 years old, and it's been here at the university for 36 years now. It's one of the most recognized programs in the nation when it comes to organizational change and development. And it also was the foundation for the PhD program. So many of our grads, including Dr. Nerl herself, would start with the MOB and go into the PhD in organization development. So it's had a lasting impact on the university. So the degree itself, one thing that's unique about it is that it pairs with something called the lecture series, which I'll cover in a little bit. That's where students in the MOB program and the PhD program, including alumni and the public, are invited to take part in hearing an OD scholar speak about current trends. And so I'll cover that in a little bit. So let's address the topic of the degree. What is organizational behavior? And I'll let Dr. Nerl answer that.
Excellent, thank you. For me, this was a unique degree that I decided to pursue because it focuses so much on the human side of the organization. Every organization is a socio-technical system. And so there are technical components of outputs, widgets, services, products that you're creating for your customers that you need to focus on as part of the overall organization. But then there's the social component as well, because organizations are made up of people. And I find that to be probably the most dynamic and challenging piece of either being a leader, a manager, or frankly, even just an organizational contributor, whether you're an individual or you're working as part of a team. And so organizational behavior lets us study those practices, those people practices within the organization. And what I also love about this degree is we give you a toolkit, if you will, of different types of theories, different types of organizational practices, because again, it's a scholar practitioner model where we respect kind of a healthy balance between both, so that you have a whole toolkit, if you will, to use in your organization, because every organization is different, every person is different. So this allows you to choose the solution and tools that kind of fit that situation specifically as well. But so it really is all about studying the people. But what I also really liked about this degree, why I pursued it, is it still has all of the typical MBA type courses where you're looking at the management operations side, understanding, basic accounting principles so that you can sit in your executive boardroom meetings and understand how the business is running as well. So it's a nice blend and combination of both.
Great. So would you say the main differentiator from this program compared to an MBA is maybe less like you're not taking like an econ class? I mean, you'll have
Correct.
business
Yeah,
stats, accounting, which we'll cover in the curriculum, but it's more focused on everything leadership and management related.
I would say yes. And I think that that's really, again, important as a differentiator. I think a lot of the business side, you can learn a little bit more in the trenches if necessary while working in a management or leadership role. I actually came and pursued my MOB degree when I moved into a vice president position. And again, I was learning all of the operational side of the business in my job. It was all of these soft people skills that were more challenging in leading teams, developing people, motivating them, just understanding the basics of human behavior. And I think that was a key differentiator for me in becoming a successful leader and manager at that stage in my career.
Great. So if we segue into learning goals then, you can see on the slide here, there are 9 defined learning goals for the program. So if you just look through them briefly, I won't read all of them, but that gives you a good idea of what the program's about and what we're looking to give you in your education here throughout it. Did you want to maybe comment on a few of them? Maybe your opinion or
And I would say, so if you, as you look at these learning goals, what we do to start out the program is we give you a broad brush of kind of micro OD, looking at the individual, or OB, I'm sorry, going all the way to macro OB, looking more organization wide and talking about change. And wow, change management is a huge topic right now. You can use that constantly throughout your career. So we look at a lot of foundational theory and practices, but as you can kind of see here, again, it emphasizes the scholar practitioner model. So we learn how to use these in practice, and then what we do in practice informs our theory. I'd say also, though, as you're kind of looking through some of the learning goals here, it's a lot of what we've learned over the years that works from a historical OB perspective, but we bring in a lot of current topics as well. One of my favorite additions to the program since I was in it is we now actually have a business intelligence class, because again, we can use and leverage data and information systems, as you can see in the last bullet, to drive effective operations, better decision-making, more strategic advantage. I do a lot of research on organizational agility. You'll see as part of our lecture series, we're kind of dabbling in newer topics in the field. We spent a lot of time talking about change when it came to COVID, and we were pivoting to topics related to leading virtual teams. So I think that what I'd say is the learning goals here provide you a solid foundation in OB with historical, again, all the traditions of the program, but we're constantly refreshing that content with new materials and new information that's relevant to the current business environment.
great. And so one question that I feel like we use the terms OD, organization development, and organization behavior kind of interchangeably. So I guess, what is the main differentiator between those two terms or subjects?
Yes, and I even did that here myself just now. So I think the biggest difference, if you will, is OB really dives deep into the people side and the people behaviors and practices within the organization. Organization development is a little bit broader. For me, it's more about how can we create strategies to help organizations continually transform to meet the needs of the business environment. I think one of the important principles that we study as part of both sides of the field is understanding that organizations are open systems. And so we interact with and get inputs from and send outputs to the external environment. So lots of factors like COVID, like changes in the economy. We're seeing right now the Great Resignation is still happening, where there's a lot of dynamic issues when it comes to business. So OD, I think, is going to be more of those broader organizational strategies. As we're looking at developing organizations. OB is more about the people strategies as we're looking at developing our people.
Great. Thank you for going over that. So if we take a look at the curriculum overview, you can see that it's broken into foundation courses and core courses. So in total, it's 12 classes. 2 of the foundation courses are, as I mentioned, accounting. So accounting specifically for non-financial managers. And then analytical tools for management decisions is a business analytics class. The foundation courses are waivable, and I'll cover that in just a moment when I talk briefly about course waivers. And then you have the 10 core courses there. And as you can see, they're all management related. So diving just right into managing the human side of organizations by going into those classes. We also have optional concentrations. What's interesting for the MOB degree is that just by completing the degree and taking all the classes, you already cover the classes that would be required for change management and talent management. These optional concentrations are available across all 3 of the College of Business master's programs. So if you did an MBA, if you did the Master of Science in Business Analytics, you have those same concentrations that you could go for. So that's something that once you complete the degree, it would be reflected on your transcript and on the academic record itself, which is great. Dr. Narrell, if you could take a moment and perhaps go through just maybe a little bit of a tidbit of what each class encompasses, and then at the end, perhaps give an example of what the assignments would be like for students in maybe one or 2 of the classes.
That's actually a very good question. So the classes that I actually specifically teach in the program, I teach the Management 60-101, which is, again, usually one of the first classes you take, organizational behavior. This is where you're going to get a very broad sense of OB. We're going to cover individual concepts, perceptions. We'll go through and cover topics like teams and groups and conflict. We'll talk about change management, organizational strategy. So we'll kind of go from, again, the individual to the broader organizational level when it comes to OB and people practices as part of that. I also teach the Management 6301, Human Resources and Talent Management class. That's actually one of my favorite classes that I got to redesign as part of this program, because we do go through human resources management and cover a lot of topics. If any of you attending are interested in SHRM or the Society of Human Resource Management and those types of certifications, we do dive into those topics. But I like that class because that's also an opportunity. We do a lot of self-exploration exercises that, 1, are beneficial for you, but 2, give you a toolkit for working to develop talent within your own organization. So I've had a lot of students give a lot of positive feedback that that's one of their favorite classes. And that class is a little different. So that class has weekly discussion boards. We're usually in an online format for that class. There is a quiz, if you will, to make sure you're kind of keeping with the cadence of the readings. But the weekly writing assignments are actually self-reflections of the exercises that you're going through, which is a little bit unique and different to that. Then we have, I also teach the 6701 Business Intelligence class. And again, I come at that with the understanding that most people are not at a level of technical aptitude where they're reading that they're going to build a dashboard and they start getting intimidated. It's actually not at all intimidating. I come at it with people having 0 technical knowledge. And similarly in that class, we have weekly discussion forums. There are weekly case studies or written assignments where you can dive deeper into some of the topics. And then as part of that class, actually one of your assignments is building a business intelligence dashboard report, if you will, with a step-by-step guide. I have open office hours, walk everyone through it. I've never had a student not successfully complete the exercise. And so they're all a little different. That class, actually, we're also offering in a hybrid format for spring, where I will have synchronous lectures. We did the same with our Management 60-101 class this past term, where I had synchronous Wednesday night sessions with students, and then they had written assignments as part of that. And I would say that's the traditional cadence for most of these. Either you have a synchronous face-to-face session once a week with faculty for about 3 hours to go through small group discussions. We go through lectures, some content. Or if you're fully asynchronous online for your class, you'll have weekly discussions where you're interacting with your peers, kind of in more of a written format. But then each class, once a week, you have some sort of a full paper written assignment, about 3 to 4 pages in length, either reflecting on a case study or reflecting on the topics that we're talking about in relation to your own organization or an organization out there. So just to maybe touch on a few classes, but I would say from an overall format and flow standpoint, that's how most of these run.
Great. Thank you for covering that. And it's encouraging to know that, for business intelligence, like, you don't have to know the ins and outs of certain technical programs, especially when I think about, I have a communication background, but this is something that if I had not done that, I'd definitely be interested in this. Also for the fact that it doesn't involve a lot of math.
No, it does not.
Yeah. So that's great. And I would say when you apply to the program, if you're thinking about it, you don't have to have any type of prerequisites met. It's just have your bachelor's degree, meet the admission requirements that we'll go over, and then the learning part, the part where you start to gain all the knowledge, comes from here. So you don't have to come into it having a certain class done or anything like that.
And I would echo that. My undergraduate degree is in clinical psychology. So while that human part of it did kind of translate to this, I didn't have a business background, and I successfully was able to get through the program. I found it very engaging and interesting, and learning all these new topics. So
Great. And I would say, from the applicants that I've seen in the program, the backgrounds are very diverse. Some people
yeah.
work full-time, some people don't work at all. Some come from a math background, non-math. It's just the degree itself is very transferable across industries and fields, which is nice. The other thing I would add is, so the way that classes work currently, Dr. Narrow touched on how they would go if they were synchronous or asynchronous. Each class is or each session is 8 weeks long. Each semester is broken down into 2 8-week sessions. So some students choose to take one class at a time, some take two. It just depends on how much you're able to carry and study, if you work full-time, have a family, all those considerations. And we do run on a 2-year schedule. So you should be able to, from the time you're admitted, plot out which classes you'd like to take, which session, knowing when the classes occur. And that way, is this degree going to take me 2 years if I do one at a time? If you're able to waive a class, it might take less than that, which I'll cover momentarily. So planning wise, those are things to consider. So all the classes take place online. And if you do take a class that happens to be synchronous, you would have an option to come to campus, come in the Goodwin College of Business, and sit in with your classmates, which is nice. So if we're going through the lecture series next, the lecture series is where the university invites distinguished guest speakers from the field of OD to come to campus and speak with students. Sometimes it takes place where the speaker is in person. It's usually held in the Daniel Goodwin Auditorium, and other times it's been streamed online, but we still invite students, alumni, the public to come in and come to campus and be a part of it. So MBA students can take this as an independent study. MOB students who take Management 6101 with Dr. Narrow are required to come in and take it. And I think it's just a really great way for students to network, not only get the current trends in OD, but meet who their fellow classmates are, especially if most of their classes have been entirely online. And if you're not able to do that, like I said, we have it streaming, but coming in person is like a different experience. Did you maybe want to talk a little bit about how this works, and maybe mention some of the favorite ones you've been a part of in the past?
Oh, okay, that's good too. So I think one of the things I love about this, and it's kind of a differentiator of this program, is that you are going to get to connect and engage with the people that are writing the books, are writing the articles that you're reading in class. The picture that you have on the screen, we had Edgar and Peter Schein. Ed Schein is the father, if you will, of organizational culture. He's written books on humble inquiry, humble consulting. You will be reading those in your classroom. Ed and Peter did a streamed type lecture. They were live, but they were on stream. Peter can't really, or Edgar can't really travel as much anymore. But Ed stuck around for the afternoon. So usually the morning is a little bit of a lecture, more so where it's an overview of content. The afternoon is more small group activities. And Ed stuck around for the afternoon. And as students were reporting out, it was fascinating because he was interacting with them directly, asking questions, challenging them, providing feedback and assumptions. So you get to really, it's almost like the celebrities, if you will, of the field come to Benedictine University and interact with you. Two of my favorites, one was David Cooperrider. We have a huge following and love for positive organizational scholarship and a topic called appreciative inquiry, which you'll learn more about when you come into the program. David Cooperrider is amazing and comes and gives the most inspirational lectures. That was my first lecture actually in the program, and I knew this was my home. Chris Worley was also another one of my favorites, which is not surprising. My research track is more on organizational agility, and he kind of wrote the book on that. So it was an awe-inspiring experience to listen to him. And then in turn, actually, a few years later after that, I was co-presenting with him on a panel, which was just a humbling experience. But it's great because they interact with you. They genuinely are interested in what you're studying and what your opinions are. And it's nice. I agree. I think it's better to have the in-person experience if you can make it to Lisle. But if you can't, we're fully accommodating with you having students on Zoom, where we could put you in virtual breakout rooms so that you could still interact with other students and get that experience. But I think the fun part of it too is it's not just your MOB students, it's the PhDs, it's our alumni. So it's great for networking and to make new connections and talk to different people. So it's a really fun day. The university puts a lot of energy behind it as well, because it's one of our premier events, if you will.
Yeah, it's great. So I've been to a few myself, and uh, it's awesome that the university has the ability to bring these people in. I think it's because of the great reputation that Dr. Sorensen, Dr. Yeager has,
Okay.
and that you've contributed to for the MOB program, for the PhD program, to bring these scholars in. Because part of, I'll just plug the PhD a little bit, is uh, having these visiting distinguished scholars, they call them, come in and offer their 2 cents and give you the ability to engage with them. I mean, that's a selling point for some people. It's a benefit of the program, but it's also something that is pretty unique, because I don't think every university is able to bring these speakers in. They're often the people who write the books. So
Right.
that in itself is pretty amazing.
And as humble as they both are, honestly, Peter Sorensen and Therese Yeager are major authors and contributors in the field. It's been humbling to be able to work with them as well in that capacity. They're in the who's who, if you will, of change thinkers and leaders, in all of the books. And they have tons and tons of publications. The library is named after Therese. We have a hall named after Peter. I mean, so, that in and of itself is just on a regular basis, you get to interact with both of them, which is just amazing.
Right. And I would add there, both Palgrave Scholars, which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing. It's a huge book that basically details the biographies and contributions of major people in the field of OD. So they're in there, and you were able to write Dr. Yeager's entry, which is great. So yeah, there's a lot of good, rich history here. Field of OD, if this is really what you're wanting to get into, this is this is the place to be. So yep. So if we move on to course waivers, that's what I mentioned before. So if you had taken previously an accounting class or a business statistics class, when you apply to the program, I can take a look at your official transcript and let you know if you got a B or better, if the course was fairly recent in the last 7 years or so, you could have it waived. And if that's the case, that would save you obviously time and money toward the program. So you would find that out before even having to fill out any paperwork, if that's something that you're interested in knowing. That takes me to our next slide, which is our 4+1 option. So if you're a current Benedictine student and you've taken those classes here as well, usually it's financial and managerial accounting, and then the business stats course. We take a look at it, and you could be a part of the 4+1 option. So that means you'd be able to, with that waiver, finish the degree in about 1 year if you were to take 2 classes every 8-week session without a break. So that's taking classes for fall, spring, and summer. If you did that, you could knock the program out in about a year. If you're looking to stay longer, if you just took it one at a time, if that's what you had to do, effort or financially wise, that's fine too. But just letting you know your options. So if we discuss admissions, applications here are reviewed on a rolling basis. So what we require is your online application. You're going to attach a goal statement. And the goal statement should be 2 to 3 pages double spaced, addressing why you're looking to apply to a master's program and why the MOB program in particular is something that would help you achieve your personal and academic goals. You'd also attach a current resume and put down the name and email of 2 people to contact for letters of reference. What we do is we send them a digital survey. They can choose to either write a letter on your behalf, attach it to the email and submit it back, or just do the survey that's been sent to them. We'd also need your official transcripts on file sent to the admissions email. And if you're a Benedictine alumni, we can pull that for you, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. We don't require a GMAT or GRE. 3.0 GPA is what we like to see, but every file that's submitted would be reviewed. And then if you're an international student, it's the same format, except your official transcript needs to be evaluated by one of the credential evaluation agencies. WES, WES, ECE, or Ed Perspectives works. And then if your country of origin did not, or if the program did not have English as the instructive language, we would just need the results of a TOEFL or IELTS exam. So the next start date we have coming up is our spring session that starts January 17th. So you'd want to turn your application in at least a week before that. I would say a couple weeks earlier if you are looking to apply for financial aid. And the session after that would be for March 20th. So going through the financial aid options quickly for the program, a lot of students do fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. That tells you what graduate student loans you might qualify for. And one thing I like to point out to students is at the graduate level, if you're looking at potentially a PLUS loan, that's not a need-based loan. So you'd still fill everything out. Even if you make a certain amount of money, graduate loans are a little bit different than undergrad. So you could fill that out if you're interested there. We also have interest-free payment plans. And then employer reimbursement if your employer is willing to help contribute to your education. They do have a deferred billing option that can all be settled with the business office. And then if you're an employee here at Benedictine, there's also a tuition remission option as well that you could contact me about. When it comes to graduate level scholarships, we have an alumni scholarship. So alumni of Benedictine are eligible for a 25% off scholarship, which is amazing. If you are active retired military, a government employee, or a nonprofit employee, there's also scholarship options as well, which I could provide you with. So if you choose to move forward and become an Eagle, that's Ernie the Eagle, that's our mascot in the corner, each student, when they start, is assigned a student success advisor. So that person is there to answer questions about anything related to school, courses, registration, when do I apply for graduation, anything of that nature. So once you're admitted, you're introduced to that person. We also have an academic support center. So it's the ACE Center. They offer peer-to-peer tutoring. There is help with writing, all kinds of things you could find through them. As you progress and move on, you would reach the alumni network and events that we host on campus. And so those are advertised on that website. And then maybe more importantly, as you start as a student or afterwards, you have access to the Office of Career and Personal Development. Matthew Johnson is the director there. He's a great resource along with the counselors they have, where you can sign up for a time. They can talk to you about what your career aspirations are, what it is you're doing currently, maybe where you'd like to go. And then they could assess your resume, give you tips about your LinkedIn profile. And they use kind of a neat system called Career Path. And I think it's Pathway U, where you can kind of gauge what it is, maybe if you're unsure, what it is you want to do. So they're a great resource for all students, current and alumni. So stay in contact. Again, I'm Jenny Jespe, the Assistant Director of Admissions. So if you're looking to maybe talk about this more, talk about what next steps are, you can scan the code and book an appointment with me. You could also visit our graduate events page to see what events we have coming up on campus. So now, if anyone has any questions, feel free to enter them in the chat and we can try to answer them.
And I will say, if anyone's interested in doing the January start, our next lecture series will be in February. So it's the perfect timing for you to start with your 60-101 class and get a lecture series right away, which is a great experience to start with.
Yeah, it's going to be at the end of February. And I believe the speakers, there's 2 of them that are coming in person.
That is true, which is very exciting. That's the first in a while.
I know, yeah, because the last few were streamed. So one question that I often get is related to like scheduling. So can I take a break? And so I'll just address that right now. So the answer is yes. All students have 6 years to finish their program, which is nice. If you do choose to take a break, the one thing I would say is reach out to your student success advisor to make sure that, dependent where you are in the program, the session that you want to return has a class that you could take, because we don't offer 20 classes every session. It's a certain select offered every 8 weeks. So you just want to make sure if you take a break that you know where you would resume when you return.
And to that point, we have there is a 2-year schedule calendar, so that there is a predictable set of classes. We're not just kind of randomly offering classes and whatnot. So that's something that would be easily accessible to kind of give you a plan of where to go with that. So
totally. And the other thing is that I often get asked is, can I come on campus if this program is entirely online? So the question is yes. So even if you're online, a lot of the online students we have are within, I would say, a 10-mile radius of campus. Some choose to come on campus and go to the library, or you could even attend a football game go to the Rice Athletic Center. You could also come get your student ID. So that's something that, could potentially give you discounts if you, I don't
Yes,
know, buy certain things.
it
And
does.
yeah,
I
so
was gonna say, even though you're a graduate student, it's still a student. I don't know if they still do this, but when I was a doctoral student, I was able to get a discount on Amazon Prime.
yeah, because you can use your Ben email
I used my
address.
student membership. I did, yes.
Yeah. And so you would come to campus security. It's right by the parking garage. You can come in. They're pretty much open any time of day. You fill out the form, you can get a parking pass, and you get your picture taken. So that's kind of nice. You could also sign up to come to admissions, which is in the second floor of the Goodwin College of Business, and take a tour and just see what it is we have to offer. So those are all like just general questions that I like to touch on, and
And
things that.
again, I would say, to the coming on campus, we are working. We just had a successful, this is the first time we were able to do a high flex since COVID, where, I had Wednesday night, I had a good portion of the class was still on Zoom because we have people that engage in this program from all over the country. I had people in Canada, I had people on East Coast, I had people on West Coast. But I did have students in a classroom in Lyle at the same time. So, if it is, you like to have the traditional, in-person classroom experience, we are working to build more of those into the schedule. I'm trying to do at least 2 classes in that format a year. I will say, even based on student feedback, because they tend to like the interaction a little bit more. I do offer virtual optional synchronous classes. And again, we're just continuing to take student feedback and shift our model to what's working best for our current student population. So there's many more opportunities for that.
Okay, so one question we had is, what if a prospective student has a 2.7 from their undergrad? Is there any kind of steps to take to be able to get in the program? So great question. And so as I mentioned, 3.0 is the ideal of the minimum that they like to look at. But what happens is when your application comes in and it gets reviewed, it gets sent to the review committee. They take a look at it, and we take, like many universities now, a holistic approach to admissions now. So it's not just like 20 years ago where it was like, what was your GRE or your GMAT? It's, we look at your resume, we look at your goal statement. Many times people with a lower GPA had some things going on that might have not allowed them to be as successful as they wanted to be. Maybe some subjects are harder than others. That does not bar you from getting admission to the program. So it would just go to review. Usually it takes about a week or so to get a response because they have to take the time to view it, meet, and then issue a decision. I would say in my experience so far, if you applied with that GPA, as long as everything else looks good, like resume, letters of recommendation, things like that, you would have a great chance of being able to move forward and start. So don't let that hold you back. There are plenty of students who I've admitted who weren't at the 3.0 who were able to move forward and be successful. So thank you for asking that question.
I was going to add on to that. So also I would say for a lot of the students I work with, there's been a gap between undergrad and grad. Or again, maybe, undergrad was a different period in their life and they weren't necessarily, as successful in some of their academics. This is a little bit more writing intensive, and I understand that process. So especially for my first class, usually is the 6101, we will help and coach you through graduate level academic writing papers. We'll help you with APA formatting, we'll help you with citations. As Jenny mentioned, we have an ACE center where they can sit down and work with you on the writing as well. So I also appreciate and understand that, not every student coming into my classroom may have taken a ton of writing, English, formatting, grammar classes coming in, right? I'm really looking for that application of theory. We're trying to get the insights, get those nuggets of critical thinking and knowledge out of you. So if you feel like I'm not so strong on the writing side, maybe I'm not fit for graduate education, I wouldn't let that hold you back either, because again, that's something that you'll learn and you'll develop as part of the program as you're going through the various classes. So,
Right.
Just to mention that as well, because I know for some people that can feel a little intimidating.
Yeah, completely. So, and I would say APA it becomes formulaic, right? So like
It
after,
does, really.
like you're just reviewing, I used to use, I think it's the OWL Purdue Lab.
Yeah.
Just go to the website, keep it up. As you're typing, like you'll start to see, okay, this is the type of citation I'm doing. After like 2 to 3 papers, you probably will feel a lot more solid because you just know this is what I have to do. I have the web page up every time. And as you get feedback from your instructors, obviously, just like in undergrad, that's going to help build you to be a better writer.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that and going over that. It's very encouraging. So yeah, as we mentioned before, there's students from all walks of life. So I mean, that can um, really be good to have an instructor who's willing to work with you too. Okay, so we have one more question. Could you also go into detail of the possible jobs that one can get with this degree? And may you share other graduate stories, testimonials, or job placement information from the school or previous graduates? Okay, so that's something where, in terms of sharing other people's experiences, if you want to email me, I'd be happy to kind of refer you to some alumni. I think speaking to alumni is very helpful. We have a lot of successful MLB alumni. The degree itself is, I feel like, from what I've seen, it's very broad. So not so broad, but you have all the classes in management. What you could do with that, similar to, I have a degree in organizational communication. There's a lot of opportunity out there because you could go into being a consultant, being an organization development consultant, talking about, what it is that this organization needs to do to fine tune its practices. You could potentially get a position that relates to HR. The types of titles that you could apply for are very wide, because I've had students ask this question before. What I like to do is I send the student to LinkedIn to go and see under our one of our alumni groups. You can see all the different titles that people hold. The other thing I would add is what job you can obtain also comes from your experience, your resume, your ability to interview, but more importantly, your connections of how you're able to get into a job. So these are all things too that the Office of Career Development would be able to go over with you and kind of fine tune to see, well, what are your interests? What are the groups that you may want to join, like on LinkedIn or on campus? That's kind of how I would answer that. I don't know if Dr. Neuro, you would offer
I was
any
going to
other
say,
insight.
so a couple of things on that. So one, I think Jenny spoke to this a little bit earlier, but there is such diversity coming into the program and in the classroom. My background is in information technology, and I use this in a vice president role. So for me, this degree was kind of after I got the job, and then I wanted to learn the skills on the job. In my last section of 6101, I had nursing students who were nurse managers, but also like moving into the administrative side of the organization. I had human resource professionals. I had accountants. I had people working in startups. I had a couple of people that were still working kind of more in the retail space, part-time jobs where they were looking to make their next career leap. So I think that's the thing with this degree that I like, is the fact that because it's based on organization behavior, it's based on the people side. You can apply this job or this degree to any job, any position. I will also say that to that point of transition, I've had students go through the program who were then envisioning what that next career was. So I can think of like two immediately, where one, she went through the program, she worked as a manager at PetSmart. Once she was done with the program, she had kind of solidified her career goals. She wanted to go into human resources. We sat down, we worked on her resume to pull out like all the key things from the degree and how that applied to the work at PetSmart, so that we can kind of fundamentally get her a better resume to get her eligible for more of those positions. And she ended up moving into a human resource generalist role. I also had someone else where similarly, he had worked in athletics at our university, so didn't really have a lot of work experience outside of venue. And also found himself into more of a change management consulting position at a healthcare organization kind of after the fact. But I would agree, like going out and looking at our alumni, there's so many people that get this degree and apply it in so many different ways in their current organizations, or use it to leapfrog into something brand new that they're envisioning for their future career.
Yeah, and I know one of our alum who came out for the business week for undergrad we had, he used to be a police officer, and now he
Yes, he did.
works in corporate at McDonald's. So it's
Yeah.
like,
And he's also an excellent student example, where he will tell you firsthand, Dr. Nero, you're a little tough on my papers. And when he first came in the program, he's like, this writing is so overwhelming. But by the end of the program, he was writing the most amazing papers. Like it takes that cadence and that feedback to kind of get through that. So I was glad he came back. It was nice to reconnect and to see like his career progression
Yeah.
basics. Yeah.
Yeah, I like engaging with alumni. They definitely help. Another question we had, could you talk about the PhD program in OD? Yes, I can. So the next cohort that we're recruiting for is for fall 2024. So it's a while out now, but you kind of need that time to talk to all the interested people. So in order to apply for that program, you do have to have a master's degree already. And so that program, again, very diverse. There are people from all different kinds of backgrounds who are interested in applying. You don't have to necessarily have like an MOB degree, although many do have human resource backgrounds. Some were MBAs, but you have to, a good candidate for it would be someone who has that master's that's done and is interested in implementing change within their organization. So while most people work in a role that can do that, like HR, there are others who come from different backgrounds. Like we have someone who has their degree in divinity right now, who's going through the current cohort, who is just interested in gaining more knowledge about how to do org development. So that starts in fall 2024 as of right now. The program itself goes for 3 years, so it's an accelerated PhD. So the first 2 years, you're meeting on campus about 16 times in a year or so in the Goodwin College of Business, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the last year, you're working on your dissertation. Sprinkled in there is some conferences where you have to present. So there might be one in the fall and in the spring. And then toward the 3rd year, there's an international trip. Since this presentation is geared toward the MOB program, if you want more information, feel free to contact me via email. Dr. Narrow, I don't know, since you're a grad, if you want to plug any other things related to that
Well, and
degree.
I would say, so similarly, actually, to the last question that was just kind of asked, I knew I always wanted to come back and get my PhD because I fell in love with the program through the MOB, and Peter and Therese you'll find them to be very persistent when they, are interested in moving you forward into the PhD program. But again, to Jenny's point, I needed to take a little time to recoup the coffers from the MOB, and it is a little bit of it's an expensive program, but that all PhD programs are, to be honest. But yeah, that's where I kind of re-envisioned. I had gotten the PhD wanting to go deeper into the change management and organizational side. And I admittedly did not envision coming out and taking a position in academia right away. And that just ended up happening. So I'm a full-time professor here, but I'm still able to use all those other skills to kind of do some consulting and practice for the scholarly practitioner type things to bring stuff in for the real world. So that actually really pivoted my career in a different direction and gave me a lot of new connections. A lot of people think that a PhD is just a master's degree, like with a lot more intense work, and it's not. It's really a whole different experience. You really grow and change and become an entirely different person going through a PhD program in a good way, because you really are, it goes fast. You're diving deep into topics. You're reading tons and tons of books. They give you stacks every time you come to class. So, but it is small. It's cohort based. I loved the intensive, you'd come for a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, knock a class out, interact, your cohort becomes your family. It's really one of the most wonderful experiences I think I've ever gone through, but it was so transformational. So I would, if it's something that you're interested in, definitely reach back out and we can connect you with some people to talk more about the program.
Yeah, absolutely. And so
I would say about that too, just kind of tagging onto the lecture series, with the PhD program, you have a regular cadence of the leading scholars in the field coming into your classroom and interacting with you. It's not just those 2 opportunities a year, it's pretty much every class. So that's a differentiator, I think, as well.
Yeah, because you're getting direct contact with the people who write the books, who are known in the field. Right. Yeah. So the visiting scholars come and maybe teach for a portion of the class when you're here on the weekend. And what's amazing is the cohort is diverse, not only in like demographics, but background, who these people are. We just started one with 16 people, and it's been incredible to see kind of how they're going, and it's only been a few meetings now. So application for that would be up in the next after the new year. So again, with that, there's an online application, references that are needed, an interview that comes afterwards, and then movement from there. So If you're
But I would
interested,
say that
yeah.
it is like, where we mentioned earlier with the MOB, right? You have like someone gets pregnant, you have a life situation, you want to take a semester off. It's a lot harder to do that with a PhD cohort because you have to wait for that point to come back around for you. So, it's something you really want to kind of prepare yourself for, like, okay, I have a 2-year commitment of going to a classroom, once a month, once every, 6 weekends or something like that. It's, you have to prepare yourself, but also your family, because it's pretty intense. So
Right, and just lots of reading.
yeah.
Um, the values-driven leadership program is built off of, I just see the question here, built off of the OD program. So a very similar format. That one we are not actively recruiting for right now due to personnel changes. However, if I'm able to tell you the next steps on that soon, I will. That initially also offered a master's program, but the uh, the PhD is similar, 3 years, you're on campus once a month. They have a 1-week intensive in the month of June. So 2 years on campus, and then they also have the conferences and an international trip as well. Uh, Toward the end of that one, you could do a dissertation, or you would go for the DBA portion, which is not as extensive and long as a dissertation. So that's something that you would talk to the instructors who teach in that program about to kind of decide what it is you want to do. Some of the classes are similar, but it has a few more very focused leadership based classes. So the curriculum is a little bit different, and the cost of tuition is a little bit different as well, but similar structure and general idea. Like I said, this is based off the OD program. But there
And,
are
and
different.
just because I was involved, we're going through like a review of both at the moment. There's definitely a core between both. So you're getting your quantitative, qualitative mixed methods classes. You're going to get the history of OD or the history of leadership. You'll get philosophy of science since it's a PhD, right? So there's core between both of them. OD is going to take you more into organizational strategy, organizational consulting, organizational change, and values-driven leadership. You're going to do, like Jenny was mentioning, more like exploration of self as a leader, more direct leading teams types classes. So it's definitely, I would say the students in that program definitely they are in leadership positions. They're either C-level, vice president level, but or running their own business. It's definitely leaders of change for that type of a program, which is, if you're like, oh, what's the difference? So a little bit different group targeted for the program as well.
Yes, yes. So yeah, if you are interested in either PhD program, again, feel free to reach out to me so we can kind of discuss what your goals are, and what would be the best fit, and if fall 2024 might be an option for you. So if that's all the questions we have at this time, I appreciate everyone being here. If you have further questions, feel free to follow up on the contact page, and then we will have this recorded and posted to our graduate YouTube channel, which I can share with those who attended later. Thanks again, Dr. Narrow, for being here.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you. Bye-bye.